I'm Sam Worcester and I'm a project officer at the Inner Northern Local Learning and Employment Network. Today I'm speaking with Ben Blennerhassett. How's it going, Ben?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for giving us your time today. Now, you're a director of photography, but you haven't always been that. So I guess we'll revisit that a bit later. Let's go straight to high school, maybe year 10 age. What were your interests and what subjects did you choose to study in year 10 and 11 and 12?
Yeah, so all the way through high school up until year 10, I was pretty fixated on a sport career, and I was adamant that I was going to make a career out of cricket, which I still regret from time to time a little bit. But in year 10, I had a bit of a turning point where I kind of found an outlet for my creativity and just found a real passion for creating images, whether it was t-shirts, whether it was photography, whether it was illustrating, drawing, all different types of creative outlets. I just found a real passion for. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my electives in year 11 and 12. So I kind of had a broad range of creative subjects. I had multimedia, media, visual arts. I had IT in there because I've always had an interest in technology and how technology kind of like is interlaced with creativity, and like English and maths as well. Yeah. So I knew with my 11 and 12 subjects that I wanted the outcome for a career to be creative, but I wasn't sure. I had no idea what type of creativity.
So I guess, you just really stuck with your interests, and I guess we're a bit pragmatic about it by choosing several different subjects to study.
Yeah, it was a pragmatic approach, and it was almost like a process of elimination. I knew I didn't necessarily want to be like a traditional artist, but I had a great interest in like visual communication, and I knew having basic fundamental understanding of drawing and even like photography and multimedia is probably, even though I maybe didn't know it at the time, it's paid off in the long run, having that like base understanding of all different types of art forms.
No, that's great. So in this time, what were some influential forces on you, say in school or outside of school? What was really, what were some big factors in sort of driving those interests?
It's a good question. There was, I listened to a lot of music. I read a lot of books and magazines based around photography and graphic design. And I found artists that didn't specialize in one type of medium. They might have been musicians, but they were also photographers, and they were also part-time filmmakers. And that kind of creative freedom and lifestyle really excited me. And also video games were a big influence on my creativity, because from a pretty young age, I was also really keen to design video games, but kind of got pushed away from that by one of my media teachers, possibly rightly so, because it's kind of a tricky field to get in, especially 10 years ago. Now it's a bit different, but I used to play video games, and I would actually like record my gameplay and put it on the computer, and then like make mini movies on the computer. So that had a big influence, because that was my first experience of editing any type of motion, because that was before like HD video cameras, which came out, kind of the DSLRs came out a couple of years after that, but that was before they were accessible to everyone.
Right.
So I could go into these video games and kind of like shoot scenes, put them on the computer, and then edit them together however I wanted. Yeah. That was actually a big thing when you asked me that question. Like, that was a big I remembered that, and it was a big influence on
Mm-hmm.
that was my initial interest in like moving picture, because film and TV always seemed so far-fetched and impossible. Like making a movie, like who knows how to do that when you're 16 or 17?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and yeah, to have that introduction then through video games in a weird way, and it'd be really accessible to do in your bedroom as a kid, was really cool.
I guess they're quite formative, those years of, you know, playing video games, and I guess you were still storytelling through the video games by chopping them up and utilizing the technology that was accessible to you at the time. Which I guess in hindsight was probably quite formative in your skills in that.
And it's funny, I still do it today. Like I still, I muck around in like video game software, and I use those tools to like tell stories, whether it's for like previews for a job, or if it's just if I've got a free day and I feel like putting my creative energy into somewhere, I'll do that. And it won't help me like on that day for a job, but in 2 years' time, maybe there's something where that program needs to be used, and I at least have a little bit of understanding about it. Which is good.
So when you're in year 11 and 12 and say year 10, could you always see a clear pathway for yourself? Was it hard to envision what you wanted to achieve, or was it sort of a process to realizing, you know, the direction you wanted to go?
I think the only clear and definitive thing that I knew was that I wanted to make stuff. Like I just wanted to create. I didn't know I didn't know what career path that was going to be. I really wanted to move down to Melbourne and do the film and TV course at Swinburne, but just couldn't do it, like couldn't afford it essentially. So I did graphic design with a minor in photography at La Trobe. At the time thinking, great, graphic design, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to be. And I loved it for the first half of the course. I was really into it. And then I kind of just got, not necessarily burnt out, but I kind of fell in love with the idea of starting and finishing a project in front of a screen. And I found myself at every opportunity using different mediums, whether it was photography or video or 3D animation. I found myself utilizing those elements into my assignments if it was applicable. And that's kind of, while I was still studying, I kind of, I guess, dabbled in some video filmmaking work. And that just kind of snowballed. Like I just felt so much more passionate about that. I don't know if it was like tangible experience of it, of having to go out to locations and shoot and then bring that footage back and edit it and get it how you wanted. I just got a lot more excited over that rather than, graphic design isn't always starting and finishing it in front of a screen by no means, but a lot of the time it felt like that at university.
So I guess throughout those early days in high school and figuring out what courses you wanted to do and studying and, you know, following your interests, what were some of the challenges that you encountered and how did you overcome them?
I think again, it's sort of, one part of that is what I just mentioned. It was, for me, I couldn't sit just in front of a screen and start and finish an assignment or a project or a design brief. I had to have some other element involved, which isn't necessarily a challenge, but I kind of lost motivation for some of the assignments, knowing that it was going to be me sitting in front of a screen for 12 hours doing it. Another challenge would be probably just comparison. I had so many references of artists that I wanted to be like, whether they were photographers or filmmakers or even musicians, and nothing I ever did would satisfy me. And I think that's probably a common theme with a lot of people, especially in arts. But I just couldn't make anything that I was ever happy with, because I had this vision of all these people that I wanted to be like, and work that I wanted to. I looked at their work and felt a certain kind of way, and I could never replicate that with my own work. But I think to overcome that, it's a time thing. I think you learn to, rather than compare yourself to someone or something, you draw inspiration from it. And that's the thing as an artist, that over time you figure out your own visual style, your visual nature, and you might pull, little percentages from all different pieces of artwork.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in your own, whether you know it or not. All your art is kind of it's a culmination of all the things you've looked at or studied at or driven past or walked past. So that was a big challenge for earlier. And I mean, I still do it. I still compare myself to other people who have been doing it for 4 or 5 times as long as I have. But if I wasn't doing that, I probably wouldn't have the drive to get better and practice and obsess over minor details. So depending on how you look at it, it's kind of a good thing, but it can be debilitating at times as well.
Was there any aha moments along the way where you sort of just really, something would happen and it really would give you the sense that you were on the right track in terms of the direction you were going? The moments that really spoke to you, looking back?
I think probably not one, but in I think it was about 2009 or 2010, DSLRs were starting to come out that had the capability of shooting HD video, which was groundbreaking, because you could all of a sudden get like this cinematic picture that looked like a movie, essentially, in like a reasonably affordable camera.
Yep.
So that as a purchase alone, and then just buying that camera, I think it was Canon 7D, and just playing with that and shooting things at home, shooting things with my friends. I went on an overseas trip and made a little video that I put on YouTube, and it didn't, by no means did it go viral, but just the process of making that was probably the biggest turning point in my young career, to realize that, okay, video and filmmaking and shooting this is 100% what I want to do. There's no ums and ahs about it. This is it. And now I'd made that video. I can't even remember what year it was. It might have been 2012. So it was a while ago. I made that video, and then from then on, everything was filmmaking, cinema, director of photography, videographer. So I guess the aha moment was buying that camera, kind of. But then what I was able to create with it.
Yeah. So you've gone from school, you've done a mix of subjects, and then you've gone into graphic design, to get those really hard skills in design to, have output, say, in a design firm. And then you've gone on to the interest of, you've gone photography and then to video. What happened with your work from that point on, and how have you sort of specialized in that process? What does your work look like as well? Yeah.
So my work looks like now, as a director of photography, I shoot a lot of different things: TV commercials, short films, documentaries, music videos, anything. But what was the question again? How do I?
Oh, the process of getting from, say, leaving
uni to where I am now.
Yeah. What were some of the different phases that you went through?
Okay, let me start that again. While I was still at uni, in my last sort of year or two, I was shooting some video for local companies, local businesses that were going on TV. And that kind of just snowballed into, I shot event videos for like one of the local bars, music festivals. I got hired to go and shoot like highlight videos. There was a year there where I shot weddings for a year. And then I moved to Melbourne, and similar type of thing, but just in a more kind of traditional workplace where a producer would be involved, a director, like the more traditional way of production. And yeah, that's just kind of snowballed with like making networks kind of at the right place, right time, making networks, and that snowballed into a whole heap of different work. Yeah, TV commercials mainly are probably my main source of work, and then a lot of sport related stuff with the AFL, and the cricket, which is good. Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of, in the work that you do, you meet a lot of interesting people and you go to a lot of interesting places. What does that look like day to day? So, tell us a bit about your workflow, the challenges, that you go through in the work that you do.
Well, most of the challenges haven't presented themselves to me this year, purely because since March, the production industry in Melbourne has kind of come to a grinding halt and not really allowed to go out and shoot. But in a normal year, through winter, I might be like doing stuff for the AFL. I might be on a plane 2 or 3 times a week, flying to Sydney or Western Australia or up to Queensland to shoot integration pieces for Channel 7 and Fox Footy. And when I'm in Melbourne, it's always different. I might have a TV commercial that's half an hour down the road. I might have one that's 4 hours away, so I'll go away for 2 or 3 nights. I did a job late 2018 that was all over the world for the best part of a month, in Abu Dhabi and Singapore and South Africa. So it's always different. It could be down the road or it could be on the other side of the world. So it's always different.
Yeah. So I guess, you're obviously working with new people and you're in a lot of different places. It must be sort of challenging to manage your own life outside of work with those challenges, I guess.
Yeah, it can be. And it can also be super daunting. Flying to a remote place that you might not know anyone on the crew. You've had email correspondence, but you might not know anyone there. And, you're flying there and you're going to be there for a week or 2 in close quarters with 10, 20, 30 people, however many it is.
Yeah.
That's a challenge for me. It's always fine, but it's always something that I sweat over in the pre-production stages. Yeah.
And knowing what you know now, if you were to go back in time, what would you do differently? With the knowledge now, going back to say year 10 or 11.
I don't actually know if I'd do much differently. I think there's no real roadmap, I think, to get where I'm trying to go. And I think a lot of my strong points have come from weird decisions that I've made in the past, whether that be graphic design, whether that be the IT component I did in year 11 and 12. I think all those different avenues that I explored early on have almost become crucial to my arsenal, I suppose. I don't know if there's much I would change. If I could tell myself something, it would be to change the mindset of comparison and try and have a bit more self-belief and do the work and keep doing it. If you finish something and it's shit, push it to the side and start the next thing. And make that 5% better. And then same again, like just keep doing it.
So if you had some advice to give your 16-year-old self, that would be it?
That would be it. Yeah. It would be, you can compare yourself, but try and do it in maybe not compare yourself. You can look at other people's work, just try not to do it in a negative light. Draw inspiration from it and use it to build your own portfolio, whether you're a designer or a filmmaker or a photographer. Draw inspiration from it and try not to compare yourself too much.
Yeah. And the work that you're doing right now, is it sort of consistent with all that? You're, doing different jobs for different clients. Where do you want to see your work go in the future?
Yeah, at the moment, I do work for all different clients. There's a couple of different production companies in Melbourne that I get pretty regular work through, but sometimes a director out of the blue might contact you and ask if you're available to shoot something, or a client, like a brand, might contact you directly as well and see if you're available to shoot something. It comes from a few different avenues, but mainly the bulk of my work is from production companies that I have a good relationship with, and we've sort of built trust with each other, and I've done good work for them and they've repaid me by giving me more work, sort of thing. So where I would love it to lead is probably like feature length content. So whether that's documentary or narrative work.
Yeah. No, great. And so if you were to give advice to a young person who wants to, we'll stick with photography or, videography, what would your advice be to that young person in terms of entering the industry and what they should do and how they should go about it?
I wish I had a good answer. I really do, but it's like, just have some self-belief and just do the work. Like, yes, meeting people is important and there's an element of networking that's important, but you're not going to get hired on just knowing someone. You might once, but if the work isn't there and the grind isn't there, then it's not going to be repeat work. And that's kind of like an essential part of it, is not only getting the work, but keeping that client and keeping that producer or that director, keeping them aware that you did a good job, and you might be available for the next project that comes up. So yeah, the advice from me is just figure out what kind of artist you want to be and what direction that is, and just do everything in your power to keep creating stuff that's pushing you along that path.
Yeah. And one last bonus question. What was your most memorable job and why? The first thing that comes to your mind.
It was a job I shot last year. I shot a documentary last year for collectively probably 3 months in Melbourne, and there was an element of it in LA, and there was also a part of it in Portland. Yeah. So that was probably mainly for the subject matter, that was probably the standout job for me.
Yeah. And where was that what sort of job was that? Was that for a company based in Australia or?
It was a documentary. It was a Netflix original documentary based on speed cubing, like Rubik's cubing, following one of them's Australian, actually, following two cubers who are kind of rivals, but they're also best friends. It's just a really nice story. Yeah. It really has nothing to do with Rubik's cubing, really. It's a story about friendship, and it was great. It was a really awesome crew. It was a really small skeleton crew. So it was kind of like, most of the time it would be me, another camera operator, producer, director, audio guy. Like, it was a really nice kind of relaxed crew and just a really nice subject matter. And also the fact that it was a Netflix film is really cool as well.
Yeah. No, that's great, Ben. And I think there's lots of good points you made there about your industry, and some very good advice given, I would say. So I just want to thank you for coming on today and giving us your time.